here, and it's actually evening in Italy. Thank you very much for joining us from Italy. It's terrific. So we'll give some people a few minutes to come in. So far, only about half the people who signed up are here, but it's an awfully beautiful day, almost all the way across Canada. So they may have to watch the recording of this later, but they'll have missed the opportunity to speak to one of our greatest partners. And I'll introduce him shortly. And how are we doing? We've got 11 on so far. And those of you who are on regularly, you'll notice that Anais is missing, and Kim Tien is helping us from head office. She's doing the technical for me. I tried to do the technical for something called Opinion 101 this week. It's where I introduce new members to how the website works and that sort of thing. And I forgot to let people in from the waiting room after the initial time. So some people complained that they'd been waiting 25 minutes and didn't get in. So I feel terrible about that. But we'll make good on that. I'll do a private one for them or something like that. So I've been getting some advice from Martina and Stefano about jokes, and they said Sicilian jokes are the best. And I have found one which isn't wine related, but it says Sicilian women are more dangerous than a shotgun. Is that true?
That's good.
Yeah. And the only thing better than being Italian is being Sicilian.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Okay.
So, you know you're Italian when your bologna's first name is Mortadella. I think that's enough, don't you?
Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, I thought. So welcome everybody. It's about 2 minutes after 3 here in Kitchener, Ontario. So some of you will be a little bit farther ahead and some of you a little bit farther behind, as we've got people from across the country. It's terrific for Opinion members to join us, and even more so for Martina and Stefano to join us from Italy. This is one of the best things in my mind about being an Opinion member, is our connection to the winemakers and the people producing, being involved in the production of the wine and providing them to Opinion members. So I won't spend too much time chatting with you, because I think Stefano Girelli. Girelli. I've been learning Italian while I've been waiting to come on, so I'll let Stefano and if Martina has anything to say, she can do so as well. And if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Stefano, and we'll get started. And I do want to say that I'm drinking one of your wines, of course.
Thank you.
And we'll be going through that, and I'm enjoying it very much. So cheers, everybody, and off we go.
Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us despite a beautiful day. I'm really happy that I have the opportunity to introduce to you Cortese, which is a winery that we acquired in 2016. You see, one of my dreams in life was really to be able to produce organic wines at a really high quality level. And I don't know if it is the same in Canada, but organic wines about 20 years ago was considered the kind of a funky wine, what I call it the post-hippie generation wine. It was a little faulty, very expensive, but it was good because it was organic. But actually my goal was really to produce high quality wines following the organic concept. So that's the reason why, from Trentino, which is really the north of Italy, I went down to the Sicily, and actually the south of Sicily, because Sicily today is probably the only region in Italy that can produce organic grapes with consistent quality. And it's very simple. The reason is that the climate is very ideal for organic growth. So it is really sunny, dry, and there are the ideal conditions to grow organic. So we've been involved, with this venture for more than 20 years, and actually Cortese just recently. And we really work very, very hard to make high quality organic wines, because I think, and I hope you share with me, the future doesn't want us to spray more pesticide. We want to be clean, we want to take care of the environment, and ultimately we should leave the planet a better place than what we found when we got it. And that was my goal at the Cortese estate. We acquired in 2016. It was already organic, and we went, trying to work and to train the vines in the best possible way. And really, we started to get some really quality results and really growing the quality. That is what really we want, and that's what really we persevere. We like to call ourselves more than winemakers, grape growers. Our job is to work in the vineyard, and that's important because unless you grow excellent quality grapes, you cannot make good quality wine. So we really break our back in working really hard in the vineyard, not using pesticide and using only natural method. We use, for example, very little element like copper or a little bit of sulfur. But at the same time, what we use really 100% natural, like, we grow our own favino, which is a natural fertilizer that helps to make the soil rich, to really give enough nutriment to the vines. And so we actually apply all this different methodology to make sure that we allow our vineyard to really grow in sync with the terroir. What we've seen over the years is that by growing organic, you allow, as I said a minute ago, to have the vine really getting synchronized with the terroir. And actually, it's what we call it biodiversity, because when you don't use pesticide, you allow a lot of microorganisms to grow in the soil. And this really makes a unique ecosystem that really makes your Nero d'Avola or your Caricante different from the neighbor. The principle is quite simple. It's like if you have a child and if he gets a little cold and you give antibiotics, what happens? Yes, the child gets healthy, but it doesn't develop the immunity system. By growing organic and not using pesticide, over the years, the grapes grow stronger and they are more resistant to disease. And we've seen that over the years, the grapes really changing slowly but surely, and actually having, for example, thicker skin and really delivering more character and actually being really representative of our terroir. And if you think that's really what we want, I want to bring a little piece of Sicily to Canada, and I want you to taste why we're different and what we're trying to do differently. By not using any chemicals, we allow this to be really out there and displays really loudly what it is and what the terroir is. So all this combined with our winemaking technique, which is very careful, but at the same time uncomplicated, because we want to make sure that all the wines that we put in the bottle are purely representative of the grape variety, allows you to drink a little piece of Sicily and actually a little bit of southern Sicily close to Vittoria. So that's our ultimate goal, to be working synchronized with nature, but at the same time to bring you an authentic piece of Sicily to your table. So that's what we're here today to show you, the next offering that Opinion will put up. And we're very proud to work with Opinion because Cortese has already been 3 years with you guys. And we've seen that over the years, people are coming back and we're getting good traction and we're getting good response. And we're very, very happy. Obviously, some of the wines needs to be explained. And this is a perfect opportunity for me to take you through the wines because I think they are really special. At least we try very hard to make them special. And it looks to me that we are slowly getting there, and hopefully you will notice when you taste the wines. And I hope you appreciated them. So what to say about Cortese? Cortese is a small estate, is 14 hectares, which is about 35 acres in the south part of Sicily, where the weather is extreme. What I mean by extreme, if you look at a map, Vittoria is actually north of Tunisia in Africa. That's how far south we are, and that's how extreme the weather can be. We can pick the grapes at 43, 44 centigrade temperature, and that's the challenge. We have plenty of sun, and actually sun exposure is really a key thing in the viticulture. Think that if we don't take care of the green management properly, we run the risk that our grapes get sunburned and literally they dry on the vine. So the green management and is very key. So throughout the season, throughout the year, we need to make sure that from the pruning to the trimming to actually making sure that the grapes gets ripened to perfection, we make sure that all the green are there to protect the grapes from direct sunlight. So it's complicated, and obviously water management is also very, very important. You can imagine that at that kind of temperature, water is a key factor, and in fact, it is. But what we've done at Cortese is an incredible investment, because we used to have two wells at Cortese where we were pumping, the water from underneath the soil. But because we're only 10 kilometers away from the sea, we realized that over the years, the water was becoming more salty because it was attracting the salty water from the sea. And you know that salt doesn't go really well with agriculture. So what we've done, we actually built a 7 kilometers long pipeline system to connect with the local reservoir in order to get, the water from the rain, which is really the best possible water. It was an investment, but is really worth the while, because really the vine starts to benefit of this really excellent quality grade water. Is a key factor, because especially when you grow organic, everything has to be in very fine tuning balance, because the water has to be right, the favino has to be right, the pruning has to be right. Is a puzzle that you have to make sure that everything is synchronized to make sure that you get to the quality results you want. So only 35 acres, and we grow our own grapes, and all the wines you're tasting, not tasting, but hopefully you'll be able to taste, are from our estate. So Michael, did I miss anything?
No, I think that if you wanted to break open a bottle, I bet you people would like to have a tasting note and hear what you like.
Okay. I would like to start with Carrecante. Okay. So we have 2 whites and 3 reds tonight to taste together. Carrecante. Maybe it's difficult to pronounce it, but it's a very, very interesting grape variety from Sicily. And actually is one of this new grape variety coming back into production. Just to give you an idea, in Sicily, there are so many indigenous grape varieties that are still there to be discovered. One of these is Caricante, that has been brought back into production about 10 years ago, and now is becoming very, very popular. Think that almost all the wines from Etna, white wines from Etna, are produced with Caricante, and this is one of the few Caricante produced outside the area of Etna. The beauty of this wine is that despite the climate, the wine, as you can see, has a really pale yellow color, which means that the grapes are grown really perfectly well. So think about the heat we're growing the grapes. What is crucial for us is to pick the grapes at the right time. So we are paranoid about this. We have the winemakers going in the vineyards and making sure that we need to pick tomorrow. And we have to pick tomorrow, because if you leave the grapes on the vine too long, you run the risk that the grapes overdevelop and overripe, and this will really lose all acidity. So what is important, especially for white grapes, is to pick them at perfection when they achieve the right balance between acidity and alcohol. So the Caricante usually is picked around the end of August to make sure that we retain enough acidity. The beauty of the Caricante is that it has a beautiful bouquet of white flowers, maybe melon, and a little bit of tropical fruit that is delicious. On the palate, because we pick very, very early, still has a very good acidity and good minerality, but that's typical of Caricante. It's a beautiful grape variety to age, because because of the acidity, can age easily 3-4 years with no problem if it is stored properly, and is extremely enjoyable with any seafood, fish or pasta or even pizza, because, you know, especially during the summer, this is a perfect, you know, wine to match also with, you know, pizza margherita or some, you know, pasta dishes, you know, with poultry or tomatoes, basil is just perfect.
I wish I had some here. That's going on my order sheet.
Okay, so one thing about our winemaking technique, as I said before, is a very careful winemaking technique, but our philosophy is that because we focus so much on grape growing, we want to make sure that all our winemaking technique does not damage what we have worked really hard in the vineyard. So it's very simple because I can take you through it in 2 minutes. Basically, all the grapes we produce are handpicked. We put them in small baskets and we bring them to the winery. Before processing the grapes, what we do, we put them in a refrigerated container where we drop the temperature. So, you know, from the vineyard that is 42, 43 centigrade temperature, we bring it to the winery, we drop the temperature to about 6 to 8 centigrade temperature. I don't know what Fahrenheit it is, but it's pretty chilly because 0 is when the water freezes. And only after that, so about 24 to 48 hours, we process the grapes. This allows us to process the grapes in the best possible and the ideal condition. And for the white grapes, it's very simple. We destem, so we take off the berries from the stems, and we put in a pneumatic press, which is basically a press that very gently squeezes the liquid out of the berries. And actually, when we collect the liquid, we ferment it on wild yeast at a cold temperature, is about 18 centigrade temperature. And then, you know, once the fermentation is finished, we keep it, what we call it, on fine lees, which are all the yeast, and is a little cloudy. So we keep it, and we keep stirring the wine because this allows, you know, the yeast to stay in contact with the liquid and really to release all the amino acids that are really important to help the flavor to come out. So this is a very simple technique, but this allows you to really get the natural and the typical characteristic of Carricante to come out, like any other wines.
Stefano, Denise is asking how you compare Carricante to Grillo.
Two different brothers of the same island. Grillo is one of the most popular grape variety of Sicily. Grillo is more structured, has more muscles, if you know what I mean, has bigger body, and is more a kind of a nutty taste, while this one is really flowery, is white flower, melon, more tropical fruit, and more, you know, acidity, really nice and very, very good length, really. So while the Grillo is a little fatter and bigger wine.
Great, thank you.
No problem. And next wine, Catarratto Lucido.
Oh,
with the donkey.
I'm not even trying that. Yes, with the donkey.
Look at this. Ta-da! Yeah, a few words about the images we use on the Nostro. As you can see, we have used a designer that it was briefed to make sure that he could, with those design, try to incorporate all the Sicilian culture, because Sicily is a really melting pot of different culture, you know, from Arabic to Greece to, you know, Austro-Hungarian, Spanish, Italian, whatever, and it's all there. So it's very Mediterranean, but has its own style. So we really wanted to reproduce some typical images of Sicily with the colors that we believe show Sicily in the best possible way. So that's what we have tried to do. So the Catarratto Lucido. Catarratto is the most grown grape variety in Sicily. Okay, comes from the Marsala area, so the other side of the island, but is a grape variety that is extremely interesting because it has so many different clones. And what I mean by clone is that within the same grape variety, you have different species that really are very different. And there's been studies recently in the last 10, 15 years on Catarratto. And actually, there are 3 recognized clones of Catarratto: Catarratto Normale, Catarratto Lucido, and extra lucido, which are two different types that are now coming back into production because they were almost forgotten because they were not productive. In fact, this produce about 50% of a normal Catarratto, but the quality results are stunning because you get more concentration. Okay, as you can see here, the color is a little darker than the Caricante, so it tells you already there is a wine that brings a lot of character. And on the nose, you get what I like is kind of, chestnuts, and but at the same time, I get the wild flowers and a lot of tropical fruit. I get a little bit of lychee. It's really almost a sweet nose that is really intriguing and very, very nice and very intense. So while the Caricante is really gentle, this is a little bit more on your face, if you know what I mean. On the palate, you have a really large palate. It starts a little really large, but at the same time, it's all lifted up by this beautiful acidity that the Catarratto Lucido has. Again, here, we are extremely careful when we pick the grapes. And here, the Catarratto and the Caricante are picked about the same time of the year. So I would say second part, end of August, beginning of September, latest. And 1 year we picked this before and 1 year this after. Because again, we go into the vineyard regularly and we check the ripening process and we pick them when they are full maturity. Winemaking process is exactly the same like Caricante. Again, dropping the temperature, which is key, and then, making everything really, really gentle. One thing I should tell you is that we do not filter the wines. We let the gravity to clean the juice. So we let it sit and then we actually rack the wine. And so we do all the cleaning process, avoiding filtration. Just before the bottling, we do a filtration. And this is because it's very simple. Every time you do a filtration, you maybe remove the solid parts, but you take away something, and you really taking away something from the wine. You really weaken the structure, and so we try very, very careful just to keep the wine as it is, because we want you to taste the real stuff, not something that is being adjusted. So two different wines, totally different. This goes, I would say, more with tuna steak or a swordfish steak with oily fish, or mackerel, for example. I love this with some pasta with olives and tomatoes, and or with some ragu or meat sauce, or pasta with meatballs, and which I love it, with a little bit of pepper, and is really delicious.
So got a couple of questions for you. Because you mentioned lychee with the one as a tasting note, how does it compare to Gewürztraminer? Kim Chen is asking.
Oh, okay. Totally different. Doesn't compare it. When I'm talking lychee here, is just a touch, and you have to think it within, the tropical fruit. The lychee is very, very subtle, so it doesn't get that sweet lychee taste. And especially, I detected together with the tropical fruit, which I found it a very, very nice touch. The pasta alla norma, the norma sauce, that's perfect.
Oh, okay. And I've got one more for you, and I think I might know part of the answer, because Denise is asking how you would compare the two whites that you've already done with Chardonnay. And given the pairing you've said with the other one with oily fish,
that's a difficult one. That's a very difficult one. That's a very difficult one. Chardonnay is probably the most versatile grape variety on the face of earth. You can taste Chardonnay from Burgundy to Australia to California, and they are all different. Depends. These are, I would say that this is more elegant than a Chardonnay. If you're comparing to California Chardonnay, for example, or you're the Napa, or actually it's closer to Sonoma Valley style, if you know what I mean. so it's less fatter, while the Catarratto Lucido is, has more structure, is more fat than
right. Have that almost
it's
that
always
buttery
difficult to
feel, but not
compare
the
it.
same, right? Yeah, it's
Huh?
hard to compare, isn't it? It's apples to oranges in a certain way, isn't it?
Exactly.
But
And we have no oak aging here. That's the other thing, because there are a lot of Chardonnay that still have a lot of oak in there. We have no oak aging here because the wines don't need it. Simple.
right. And Denise did clarify that it's Burgundy Chard, so she would probably on the first one more so, right? That
So she raised the bar, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, certainly Burgundy is. We're working to get there, but obviously the wines are different, and
And rightly so, right? I mean, you're not
rightly
trying to
so,
be a
but that
Chardonnay, right?
viva la differenza, viva la difference,
Yeah.
because that's the way it should be. Because if the whole white wine world will taste Chardonnay, that would be boring.
Yeah.
Don't you think so? Okay.
All right.
Any more questions otherwise before we move on to Nerello Mascalese?
I don't think this is more of a comment about the lychee again, and Kim Tien is obviously lychee crazy. so please go ahead, Stefan.
Nerello, that's another grape variety that's been brought back into production quite recently, I would say in the last 10, 15 years. And this, again, is a grape variety that is mainly grown onto the Etna, but now it's started to be grown also outside the Etna area. This is a beautiful grape variety to work with because it's so typical. So Nerello comes only from Sicily, like the Carrecante and like the Catarratto Lucido. So this is what we call the indigenous grape variety, so unique. I mean, you can find probably somebody around the world growing there, but that's where these grape varieties come from. So you're really tasting a piece of history of Sicily and a piece of Sicily because that is really unique. So Nerello Mascalese, we started to produce this in 2016, and is a very, even though it's an ancient grape variety, I would say it's a very, very modern wine. Because, the Nerello has a pretty thick skin, and actually the way we identify, we want to make a wine that is really pure fruit driven. Look at the color, is really intense, ruby red, and on the nose is an explosion of red berries, strawberries, plums, and is a mix of fresh berries, but at the same time you get the touch of the heat of Sicily that really makes it unique. I don't know if you ever been on an island, a hot island. When you go around, you get a special smell because it's really unique. And what I get on the nose is I also get a little bit of pepper. And on the palate, it's soft, round, with very, very, we call it integrated tannins. Let me tell you a little bit about our philosophy on red wine making. Again, here, we picked the right time, and actually Nerello is picked around the second part of September. We don't particularly like our wines to be over alcoholic. This, let me see, is about 13.5%. So despite the fact we could ride the grapes longer, we like to actually pick the grapes a little early to retain the acidity that makes the wine fresher. Again, we pick by hand, bring the grapes to the winery, chill the grapes, and actually we destem the grapes, and we have a very simple but state-of-the-art machinery that destems the grapes. Is a destemmer that really separates the skin, the berries from the stem in a very, very gentle way, because you don't want to damage the skin. And then we go into the red wine fermenter. We sometimes crash, but really, really softly, and we go into the red wine fermenter. What we do here typically is we do the pumping over that help us to extract the color and the tannins in the early part of the fermentation. This really helps to extract the color and the tannins with very little alcohol content. And the reason is very simple. Alcohol is a solvent, and it can be aggressive on the skins. what you want in order to get really soft extraction and sweet tannins is really to extract the tannins without too much mechanical intervention. You don't want to damage the skin, and that's the way we do it, with very little alcohol.
And you
The
do
wine
get
then, go
sorry,
ahead.
you get heavier tannins and more bitter tannins when you leave the stems in, right? So by removing the stem.
Exactly. We remove
Yeah.
the stems, and sometimes we remove the pips as well, depending on the vintage. But the way we want this wine to be full integrated, so alcohol, acidity, and tannins to be what I call it, a ball on your palate. So the nose is really fruit driven, but on the palate is soft, easy drinking, but at the same time really, really long and complex. This is a wine that we've introduced in Sicily and is becoming really successful. It's very much liked by the new generation. In Italy, we have this fashion about the aperitivo now. We go out prior to dinner, we do the aperitif. And a lot of people are drinking red wines as an aperitif and, some snacks. And this is perfect. In the summer, I was just suggesting Kim, just put in the fridge for half an hour, slightly chilled, kind of rosé temperature, maybe a little warmer, and it's perfect. So during the summer is a perfect summer wine, slightly chilled. What does it go well with? Any prosciutto, any cheese, soft cheese, goat cheese goes really, really well. Pasta with red sauce, meat sauce or chicken sauce. I would go to veal chops as well. I love it with veal chops, and some extra oily fish if you really want to be trying your palates, because it can go really, really well when you do a kind of a fish stew. I don't know if you do it in Canada, but in Sicily you do this kind of fish stew that goes.
Our
really
food guy actually wrote grilled swordfish with tomatoes and capers with this wine. So
because okay, the tuna, capers, and tomatoes are acidity, saltiness,
yes.
and fattiness of the tuna. Especially how you call it, the fatty part of the tuna is called, we call it ventresca, you call it toro. Toro, the fatty part of,
I think even the
fattiest
belly,
part.
yes, yeah, right. And so I can tell that that she's trying to decide which of these to buy. So Denise is still asking with the Grillo whether it's the Caricante or the Catarato, and I think she should buy both, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. But
they're different. I mean, I depends on your taste, on what she likes. She tastes the Grillo, right? Did she like the Grillo, or she didn't like? What is her favorite wine? Because then maybe we compare it. But experiment, try it, because the best way to do it is experiment and try different things.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing a feature in our catalog now called Cellar Up, where we're describing different wines that are available in the catalog that are different styles, so that people can get out of the style that they're used to. I used to only drink really heavy reds, and after it actually took some wine training, so that now I wines fit in certain ways. Like I'll sip a rosé on the back deck, and I'll have a Beaujolais with something like veal, like you said, but I'm going to be ordering this one too. You're going to break me here, because I'll be. You mentioned veal with this one, and I love veal, so I'll order this one and do that one. So I'm Norello Mascalese.
Mirello Mascalese.
Okay, good.
You need to do this.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. And
okay.
So Denise, we'll finish with Denise. She said, yes, I like Grillo. My favorite is a Chablis. But
Okay,
I think she means a Chardonnay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So probably the Caricante, but because of the Chablis has a lot of mineralities, good acidity, is more what I call it a vertical wine, and that's probably Caricante should do.
Right. Excellent. Thank you.
But obviously Chablis,
That's
Thank you for comparing.
You're right. It's wonderful. All
okay,
right.
now let's move to the next two wines, which are really, really special. The first wine we're going to be tasting is a Senia. And why is it special? Well, first of all, this is 100% Nero d'Avola. And Nero d'Avola is the most grown grape variety in Sicily. So if you think red wine and Sicily is Nero d'Avola because it's grown all over Sicily. The beauty of Nero d'Avola is, as much as the Chardonnay, extremely versatile. So the way it's grown on one side of the island or the other side of the island makes really different wines. And is a grape variety that adapts to the terroir in an incredible way. So when we bought this estate, we had this old vineyard there. And because we're located in the Senia hamlet, we decided to call it Senia, like the hamlet. So that is a typical wine for that area. And I would say that Senia is pretty unique because if you taste the Nero d'Avola from 10 kilometers away, is very, very different. At the same time, with the Selezione wines, we actually have decided not only to focus on really extremely careful viticulture, which obviously is our must, but at the same time, to really bring back to life some very ancient winemaking technique. Because we thought that it was important for us to bring back some of the tradition of the winemaking that it was used in Sicily many, many centuries ago, and to really try to make the wines in that way. Because again, you know, we want typical and typicity in our wines. So our Senia is produced from 100% of our grapes produced at Cortese. You are going to be offering the 2017 vintage, which is the second vintage we've done. Again, here, you know, comes from a vineyard that we have at Cortese, which dates back, it's about 25 to 30 years old. Is all, you know, in the Guyot style, very low yield. We're talking about maybe 40 hectoliters per hectare, so very, very low production, high concentration. And the beauty is that when we bought the estate, the vineyard was in terrible state. The lady, the previous owner, did not water the vineyard for years, but we found this vineyard that somehow managed to survive. This means that the clone of that Nero d'Avola was so much embedded with the soil that managed to survive. So we had just to really train it back, give it some water, and we got some phenomenal quality results. And we're very, very proud of what we've done because I think we have such a typical product and really unique to Cortese as well. So Senia, Nero d'Avola, 2017 vintage. Let me tell you about the viticulture because, you know, I've been telling you about the viticulture. Pick the grapes by hand. Again, you know, chill the grapes. We always chill the grapes before processing them. So we destem the grapes and actually we hardly press the grapes. So just destem it, and just by destemming, you slightly crush the berries. And then what we do 100% open barriques fermentation. So I don't know if you're familiar with barriques, but there are 225 liters barrels, which we put it vertical, we take the top off. And so instead of doing a big tank, we do a lot of small barriques where we do single barrels fermentation. Big advantage is this. First of all, we only have about 170 liters of liquid in a barrique with all his skins. And the mass does not be, you know, when you ferment the wine, you have temperature developing because the fermentation transform the sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide and produces heat. But when you have such a small quantity, the temperature always stays naturally at the perfect level. Then the second advantage is that we don't do any pumping over because it's such a small quantity. So we just do hand push down. So we push down the skins by hand in order to get the color extraction. This allows us to also, by using wild yeast, to really get soft extraction and to keep the skin in contact with the wine for about 3, almost 4 weeks. So once the malolacticus fermentation, we rack the wine, we do one blend, and we go in bigger botti. So why we want to bring this back? In the old days, the barriques was created to transport the wine, or the port, or the bourbon, because there was where they were used to load the ships. But then they started to use to age the wine. Then some people, okay, I have this container to use for aging, let's use it for fermenting. And actually the quality results is extremely important, because the interaction between oak and wine during the fermentation is really incredible, because during the fermentation, the wine needs oxygen. And by using the oak, there is some oxygen that comes through the oak and really is called micro-oxygenation, microboulage, that really gives micro quantities of oxygen to the wine and really helps to combine the tannins and to make it really stable color. Sorry if I'm going too technical.
No, this is fascinating.
That is something that has been used in the past, but we've been thinking about and studying it, and really gives us some phenomenal quality results. So this is 2017 vintage. Look at the color. Yeah. It's so still vivid. There's no brownish. And this is exactly why this microboulage or micro-oxygenation effect is. So it fixes the color. It really helps to have a more stable color, doesn't go to brown, but at the same time, it does create, sorry if I go into technical, this what is called polymerization of the tannins. You know what the tannin is this molecular that really dries your palate, and is when you bite something that has really hard tannins.
It's like a tea bag.
Exactly, it's like a tea bag. And what you do actually, by doing this polymerization, you actually combine the molecular of the tannins with the oxygen. It makes a bigger molecular, and you have a molecular that is bigger in dimension, is fixed, and really is much softer on your palate. So you still have the tannins, but it's much softer on your palate. Sorry if I'm going too technical, but I thought
that's excellent. Thank you. I'm sure everybody's loving to hear this.
Okay, so after the malolactic is finished, we put the wine back into barriques for at least 1.5 years. Then we bottle the wine, and we leave the wine in bottle for about 6 months before releasing the wine. The only problem we have with this wine is that we only produce 10,000 bottles. End of the story. No more production. So very, very limited production.
Thank you for letting us have access to some. We appreciate that.
What you get on the nose is when you go in Sicily after a thunderstorm and you walk in the vineyards, you get bombarded by all this beautiful perfume smell of green, vegetal, soil, heat, spiciness. And that's what I get here. I get a lot of spices. I got really the terroir of Sicily is really earthy style. Little touch of leathery, but so smooth and so on the back of the nose. And again, very soft palate, very soft tannins, but at the same time, we still have enough acidity to make this wine lasting really long on your palate. So it's a wine that enters on your palate like this and keeps going on like this. Sorry but I think the best way to describe sometimes the taste is Absolutely. Really to drawing it, because it's a sensation, and that's how you get it. Our ultimate goal is to have a wine that is homogeneous and gives you a total sensation, doesn't have the alcohol, the acidity, and the tannins. They all have to be melted together, because that's how you appreciate the wine. What can I say about this wine? It's a beautiful wine, can age easily 10 years, but it's perfectly to drink now. And actually, we release it when it is ready, but it has a good aging potential. What does it go with? Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
What does it go with? Obviously, roasted beef, lamb chops. I love it with lamb chops. I love it with ribs. I love it with barbecue. It's perfect with barbecue. And very, very rich cheese, like, hard cheese, Stilton or Gorgonzola or Parmigiano Reggiano.
Well, and I can tell how much you love this wine. And in fact, Jane Masters loved this wine just as much and made it one of her coup de coeur. There's only 4 wines in every offering out of almost 75 that she chooses, and this was one of them. So it's
No, it's special and is again, is very, very unique. It's very unique. Well, and I hope you'll enjoy it because it's pretty, pretty unique.
And how much of Sicily's wine is made with Nero d'Avola? Is it a huge amount, or?
Well, the largest proportion of red wine is made with Nero d'Avola.
Yeah.
Then obviously the Nerello now is coming back into production. It's beautiful because in Sicily, about 25 years ago, we had this fashion of international grape varieties. So a lot of people planted Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Merlot. But now, in the last 10 years, the whole thing changed again because finally we realized that the world does not need another Merlot or another Cabernet Sauvignon. We are Sicilian. Let's show the world what we can produce in Sicily. And, I think, the world is full of really good Cabernet Sauvignon, really phenomenal Merlot. And I think there are not enough good Nero d'Avola around. So that's what we should be doing. At least this is my thinking. Okay, last wine to taste, Sabucci. Difficult to pronounce, but this is a Cerasuolo di Vittoria. Why is important? Because this is the first and only DOCG of Sicily. So our village, Vittoria, has been given the DOCG appellation because it has produced over the years a wine that is very unique and typical. So the concept behind DOCG is to really give the appellation to wines that are really unique, like the Barolo, like the Gavi, like the Chianti Classico. They are unique to an area. So this is a very traditional wine, ancient, and is a beautiful wine because it's a blend of Nero d'Avola, which you just tasted, and Frappato. Frappato is another unique grape variety to Sicily, but actually the Frappato originated from Vittoria, which is our own village. So it's the perfect place for Frappato. So the Cerasuolo di Vittoria, by law, has to have at least 50% of Nero d'Avola to a maximum of 70% of Nero d'Avola, and the balance is going to be Frappato. So what we have done special in this wine, again here, think about two different grape varieties. One, a Nero d'Avola, which has small berries, thick skin, small bunches, and the Frappato, which is the opposite. So bigger berries, bigger, thinner skin, so bigger bunches. So they ripe at a totally different time of the year. So usually they are picked separate and then they're blended together to make the Cerasuolo Vittoria. So I just described you what we do with the Nero d'Avola, to remember the open top barriques. But what we've done here with 2019 vintage, actually starting with 2016, we actually have fermented the Frappato in amphora. The terracotta amphora. And this is a technique that we've been studying for a number of years, and we started to use in 2016, experimenting, but we realized that it's a beautiful technique. Incidentally, Vittoria is located about 15 kilometers away from the largest Greek colony. And what they found in that colony is the largest collection of Greek amphora that exists. And actually they found some amphora still sealed with some wine that it was transported over, thousands of years ago. So many, many years ago. So we decided to use this amphora, and amphora is a different world because amphora is a very porous material. So you got to be careful because the wine has an evolution that is different. So again, here, pick the grapes by hand, chill the grapes, descend the grapes, go to the open top barriques for the Nero d'Avola. But for the Frappato, actually, we put the wine into amphora. These are 700 liters amphora. They're designed in a special way, so it's like an egg shape. And this egg shapes allows, during the fermentation, during the aging, the liquid to make this circulation. This helps to keep in motion the whole liquid inside, because obviously the amphora has a very narrow top and there is not much you can do. So because the amphora is very porous and allows a lot of air in, we actually have decided to balance off the potential oxidation of the wine by keeping the wine on the skin for 1 year. So we keep the wine on the skin after fermentation for 1 year. So what does this make the wine? Makes the wine that is with big tannins, very, very round and soft. And let me show you the color. I don't know if you can compare it with the Nero d'Avola we had before. This is a little paler in color, a little brownish because it comes from the amount of oxygen this wine had during the fermentation, but actually has a unique style. This wine, the problem with this wine that before you start tasting it, I can smell it for 20 minutes and I can get different sensation because while it's breathing, it really changes over time. And I get from the nuts, from, how do you call it, carrube, is a kind of, black fruit we have in Sicily. I get the pepper, I get cardamom, beautiful. And, again, reminds me so much the soil. We have a Cortese that is unreal. And on the palate, it's so large. Obviously, it's totally dry, but it's so well balanced and it's so long on the palate. I keep mouthing my mouth because, it keeps coming back and it's beautiful. Very complex, very long. First vintage we produced was 2016. And the wine is really aging extremely well. We're going to soon have a vertical tasting, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So in about 2 years' time, we're going to do a little bit of vertical. But the aging potential is incredible. This wine has so much structure and so much body, but yet at the same time is soft and easy drinking. So it's not a kick in your stomach, if you know what I mean. It's something that really intrigues you and really,
It's what I love about it's one of the things that where we buy by the case as opinions. It's wonderful because I get 6 and I can drink one now and they're drinkable, but I can also put it down and let it age and have it again. And I take notes so I can make the comparison, and that's a ton of fun. Really enjoy that.
Okay, this again, is very unique. There is one Cerasuolo di Vittoria in the whole of Sicily. One DOCG is one of the smallest DOCG. And I need to tell you something about DOCG. You know that in Italy, our DOC and DOCG are carefully regulated and actually by law, there is a limited production. So you cannot exceed this production. Our production per hectare is lower than Brunello di Montalcino. So we produce less wine per hectare than Brunello di Montalcino by law. Wow. But it's very simple because we don't produce that much there. So that is how special this wine is.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's amazing. I can't wait to taste them all. I'm going to put in the order. And I can tell Kim Chen's going to want a bottle of each one of my cases as well. Well, that's great. Does anybody have any other questions? Look at that. You've done really well. 55 minutes. That's we like to try and keep them to around an hour. I keep
going on forever. This is my babies. Listen, I know everything we've done.
You are obviously so passionate about the wine and understandably so. And did you want to talk briefly about the wine people and And
Well,
the
wine
other
people,
lines?
yeah, the Wine People is the commercial arm of these wines, and through the Wine People, we bring the wine all around the world. All the wines we have in the range are extremely carefully. We apply the same philosophy in the other wines. So we grapes first for us. Unless we have excellent quality grapes, we don't produce wines. Sometimes we skip vintage because the grapes are not good enough. And we stick to the quality. We are very, very careful in the winemaking and all the process. We have a wide range of wines, but we apply the same passion and love for winemaking and for grape growings in all the wines we produce. Opinion has been a great partner for us. I've known Jane for a number of years. She is a really, really great selector. She knows her job inside out, and it's a great pleasure. She's not always easy for us because she always challenges you, raise the bar, but that's what she's there for, and she's really professional. And I have to tell you, she is a number one. She's really good.
Well, as you know, it's Opinion's all about people and about our connection to people like yourself, and so Cortese is just the perfect fit for us as well. We really appreciate it, and your passion comes through so easily with the way you speak of these wines. So we really appreciate your taking the time. And
It's my pleasure.
And to everybody who's on the call, thank you very much for joining us today. And if you have any further follow-up questions, we're happy to get them to Stefano. And Kim Chen, thank you for operating today, taking some of your Sunday. It's going to cost me a bottle of wine, I know. So
at least.
Yes, at least. She's not that hard done by, I can assure you. So again, we thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.